Welcome to Blueprints for Liberty, Designing the Freedom Cities of Tomorrow. This is a podcast that explores the visionary concept of freedom cities and how we can create living environments that prioritize individual liberty, social harmony, and equal opportunities for all. We look back through history to see how the past informs the future and how people can self-organize in their communities to support self-sufficiency. We also look to develop leaders that are moral and ethical in a world that is spinning out of control. Tune in to be part of the conversation shaping the future of our communities.
Okay.
Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you have joined us again. Today we have Dr. Laurel Mellin, and I'll just let her jump in and introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what she does, and we'll go from there.
Oh, well, in light of your emphasis on people being leaders in a way that's gentle and yet powerful, I'm a health psychologist. I developed emotional brain training, EBT, at the University of California, San Francisco, where I was a professor for more than 40 years. And even though I was in the system of medicine as a professor, I was always interested in going deeper and finding out what makes us do what we do. And how can we be more loving, spiritual, and wise people to have an influence? Because I'm 76 now, I think I started this in my late 20s. And when it's all said and done, what has our life experience been? How much joy have we had? And also, how much have we changed the world so we can leave the world a better place? And in doing that, I had to solve my own problems, which were a long list of stress-related problems, from anxiety and depression to overeating to different things. And I found some tools that seemed to work so well that it was frightening to me. They were just emotional tools. They came out of the scientific literature of saying emotional connection's everything. But it led me on a journey for those almost now 50 years to find an entirely new paradigm in how we think about life. And when you switch to this new paradigm, which is to think in terms of circuits, brain circuits, instead of like teasing those circuits apart so that you think in terms of what are my emotions, what are my thoughts, what are my behaviors, what's my biochemistry, because the brain doesn't work that way. The brain just dumps them all together. So it makes life exceedingly simple and makes you be able to honor our DNA. And our DNA, for all of us, every single person on the planet, if we take the circuits that are bothering us, which are called stress circuits, which get us stuck, stalled, and overwhelmed, and we process our emotions so they're back into these healthy circuits, we call them joy circuits. Within 2 minutes, you're your best self. And you are in a state of neural integration connection. And you know the feeling. I mean, it's not like joy being happy. It's more like joy being connected, joy being gritty, joy being, grounded in your own body and trying to, radiate out something that will help someone. And that is so influential that you can be one person in a whole group or one person in a family, and when you use EBT to shut off the stress circuits that are biochemically really nasty, they're fight or flight circuits, and we all have them because everyone gets some in childhood and everyone gets some when the first person left them or when they lost their job or whatever. And they rattle around in our brain, and that's what makes us doubt ourselves, makes us not understand our true power. And when you process them with these emotional tools, which are on an app, where people come together in community and use the tools together, you turn into a person that radiates out loving connection and wisdom. And what is inside you, literally, whatever circuit is inside you, is going to radiate out whether that person wants it or not. And it's going to go into their unconscious mind, their emotional brain too, and it's going to change their circuitry. And that's how we affect each other. So the way you speak about, being powerful, the power you have is to notice when you feel disconnected. Notice when you're eating, drinking, spending, shutting yourself away, doubting yourself, feeling unworthy. Any of those are all circuits from stress. You clear those away, you feel empowered, and you participate. You engage with people. And when you do, if you can stay at that connected state, whatever is good inside of you in that moment from that circuit will go into their brain and will rewire their brain one neuron at a time. And that's how we change the world with our own brain.
I find that extraordinarily interesting, particularly because when I speak in my program about leading when you're not the leader, one of the things that I stress first and foremost is changing yourself. And in doing so, that energy that we project then can influence just even on a, what's the word I'm looking for? On a level, just your energy it's not vocal, it's not, you can't hear it, you can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't touch it, but it just makes a difference with everybody around you. And I find that interesting. And the other part that I find interesting is I've always been fascinated by the medical community. My dad used to say, and it's a joke, and I really get it, is that the medical, doctors are only practicing medicine. And to that end, I find that the medical community for a long time, I should say Western medicine, not so much Eastern medicine, is very reactive instead of proactive. And I think if we were to engage with a lot of these ideas that you're talking about, we would have a lot fewer medical issues as well as emotional issues. So there's two things that I took away from what you said that I kind of like you to expand on, if you don't mind, is, how do we walk into a room and just change the whole dynamic of that just by our being a different person? And how is this helping us from a purely physical perspective?
Well, I'll start with the second question, which is EBT and getting the circuits in your brain to be health promoting chemicals instead of disease promoting chemicals, and that's both mental health and chronic diseases, is the best prescription drug you could ever have. There's no prescription drug or even cluster of them on the market that's as good as your brain can put out when you're in that state of connection. Now, this is because our genes evolved over the eons to have multiple feedback loops so that even when something is not going quite right in the brain, it has default positions. It compensates. It understands everything that's going on, and everything is connected to everything. And so it is adjusting one chemical with another and one electrical impulse with another. So your brain is your medicine chest, is your insurance. And that's why people come into EBT in the first month, they learn how to create joy in 1 minute with the app. And then, because you have to train your brain likes to be in stress. Most of us are wired for stress because everyone around us is wired for stress. And we don't even know how stressed we are. But we have a set point in stress. And there's 5 different levels of stress in the brain. Number 1 means low stress, joy, all the good chemicals. 2, not so good. 3, 4, and 5, you are essentially toxic. And most people everyone has a set point, whatever you're used to being. If you're hanging out at 4 or 5, which means definitely stressed, which 4 is the norm in our society now, because everyone cleans up their symptoms by taking medications rather than going to the root cause and rewiring the circuit. So they get sicker and sicker, but they don't have symptoms of it because they've covered them up, which it gets to you sooner or later because you have the premature aging, you have all the symptoms from one to another. But people start by learning how to create joy. There's 7 different ways. You get your brain to come, you just do it every day here and there. And then you learn how to process toxic emotions because we all have them. We get anxious or numb or depressed or whatever. All you have to do is express 4 feelings in a certain order, and it'll clear that emotional blockade that we all get stuck in. and it'll spiral you up to joy because that's our natural state. So you rewire, you learn how to do that, and then you're going to get bored. So the third month, what you do is you rewire four circuits, whatever you think is bothering you. It could be like eating, drinking, spending. It could be um, relationships where you're distancing or merging, or it could be a mood you get stuck in, or judging your body, or work stress, whatever that is. But four major circuits that get you stuck or stalled or triggered, you erase them. By that time, your set point isn't 4 or 5 anymore. It's more like 3 or 2, and you feel great. And then you stay with it. Most people stay in these little clusters of telephone groups because it's all online. I mean, it's all anonymous, so nobody knows, but it's very close. People get very close until their set point is at 1, which means you're wired for joy. Once you are hooked on higher purpose and your brain's naturally resilient, you will have what science says is the best predictor for longevity and freedom from disease, because it's called, in science, it's called an allostatic set point is what kills us, and a homeostatic set point is what saves us. And you will then not only have that good set point, but you'll get so many reward chemicals, dopamine, endorphins, oxytocin from how you live every day, like that you will be wanting that. It'll be natural state. You just get back to it. So you still go into stress when things are bad, but you snap back right away instead of getting stuck in it. So I would say the major thing is we have epidemics of mental health problems and chronic diseases, not because of the food supply. The food supply is not good, but anyone who's wired at 1 won't eat that stuff anyway. Because they won't eat that stuff because they're at 1 and they're getting all their reward chemicals from inside their own body, and they don't have a drive to eat that stuff. So all of the things you're hearing about, lifestyle is really important. I certainly eat healthy and I exercise and I sleep and all that kind of stuff. But that is not the root cause of our problems. The root cause of our problems is when our brain is in those stress circuits, it goes to extremes. We disconnect from our body. We don't listen to the wisdom of our body. We don't feel empowered. We feel unworthy. And then in those states, we're going to behave in ways that aren't that great. So the issue is that if everyone in America got the EBT app, and I'm a scientist, I'm a medical school faculty. I just retired 2 years ago, but I'm still doing research there. The point is that the problem in our society is the stress circuits in our brain. And the reason it is not that the medical establishment is bad or wrong. It's that everyone knew the problem was a stress circuit. Any neuroscience you listen to, they say it's the stress overload circuits in the unconscious mind. But you can't change those circuits by positive thinking, by drugs. Even antidepressants do not change them. You grow more brain cells when you use antidepressants, but to shape those circuits and rewire the old one takes emotional experience. So thinking, planning, deciding, making lists, a waste of time because you're not going to change those circuits. Instead, rewire your stress circuits into joy circuits. You naturally come up to brain state 1, and then you don't need lists because you have urges and drives to be loving, to be kind, to have the virtues of brain state 1, which are have generosity, empathy, kindness, courage, uh, willingness, humility, enthusiasm, all of those qualities come out when you're in brain state 1. And everyone wants those qualities. So when you walk in a room and you have them, they want what you have. And so they'll listen to you. So you influence them, but also the circuits in your brain automatically are downloaded. So just your presence on the planet is going to make you a leader.
I like that. One of the things in my program that we focus on is these levels of consciousness, and you've probably heard of this. I can't ever remember. I always want to say Stephen Hawking, but we know it's not him. It's, I think, David Hawking. Can I get his last name right? Can't always get his first name right. But he wrote a book called Power versus Force. plus a whole lot of other books. And he talks about these levels of consciousness, and it reminds me of what you're talking about. You know, your lower levels of consciousness are anger and hatred and, those types of things. And we talk about getting to these higher levels of consciousness. And, if we look at the people that are supposedly at the top of this list, they're people like Gandhi and, Jesus and Mother Teresa and, people that we look to as these models of love and kindness and humility, all of those different types of things. But it's interesting to me is nobody's ever, that I have found, I mean, had a prescription, and I don't mean, like a doctor going writing a prescription and giving you, medicine, but they never had a formula, that's a better word, for how do we get there. Everybody has a different idea, and I think all of them have merit and all of them have value, but they don't necessarily, they're sometimes challenging and difficult to employ in your life, and they require a whole lot of practice and those type of things. So from what I'm hearing from you is, we're kind of, and I don't mean this negatively, but we're kind of beating our head against the wall sometimes, trying to do all these
Absolutely.
things.
Cheryl, number one, anyone who has a habit they don't like or like does things they don't want to do, whether it's eating, drinking, spending, whatever that is, puts a huge amount of effort toward trying to change the behavior that is the tail end of a fight or flight drive in a stress circuit. It is absurd. If you are going to change the behavior, it's going to be really hard and there's going to be a lot of relapse. Instead, do it the easy way. You use the EBT tools, you identify what that circuit is, and just by complaining and expressing emotions that are really strong emotions very briefly, the brain automatically identifies targets and unlocks the exact circuit that is amplifying your stress. A brain scan can't even do that. And it opens it up and it takes the synaptic connections between the neurons and opens them up so that in the next 2 hours, if you program into your brain by repeating the positive uh, opposite of that, you can weaken or even break that circuit. And when you do break the circuit, there's evidence for that that has nothing to do with going to a laboratory or doing anything else. You notice that you spontaneously, without any effort, don't engage in that response. And that's your evidence that you were successful in rewiring the circuit.
Oh, sounds like a piece of cake. So let me give you an example and maybe you can help me work through this because one of the things that I have encountered in my own life, and it's been probably 10 or 15 years ago, I had a brain scan because since you brought that up, it made me think of it. And it's not the brain scan. There was two parts of it. There's the part, I don't know. Anyway, the second part, they attach these electrodes, to your brain, and they measure the activity in your brain.
Uh-huh.
And I've always known this about myself, but it's always been challenging to me. In some ways it's a blessing, but in more ways it's a curse. And they put me in a very dark, quiet room and let me look at this beautiful scenery, pictures changing and music, nice calming music, in order to supposedly measure the electrical activity in my brain in what should be a very calm state. Well, one of the things they found when they were done doing this scan in my particular brain is anywhere where there was red that showed up in the scan was, lots of brain activity going on. And here I was in this and I honestly, I felt like I was in a calm state while I was just sitting there for 20 minutes, staring at beautiful scenery and listening to music. But what it was showing was my brain was just firing like crazy. It was just like, and when I was a teenager, a young girl, I always enjoyed walking. And one of the reasons that I enjoyed walking was because it gave me a time to, and I didn't realize this till I got older, was calm my brain down, to kind of take all this activity that was going on in my brain and just kind of hopefully, get it out of my brain and say, and I would, when I would start my walk, my brain would just be like thinking all these things. But by the end of my walk, my brain had settled down and it was like, okay, now we can go and do what we're supposed to do. So, thoughts?
Okay, so we have an illusion as Americans that we can think our way out of something, or our thoughts control us. Our thoughts are like spitting in the wind compared to the unconscious activations in our emotional brain. So here we are, it's almost pathetic, but it's part of our society. We're taught this, that we can think our way out of things because our conscious mind is the boss. That is absolutely wrong. It turns out that the circuits I am telling you about, that we didn't know how to control until EBT was discovered in 2007, that those circuits are what's called in our unconscious memory system, our implicit memory system, and they have no source attribution. What I mean by that is that um, when we remember, we're trying to say, oh, now where did I put my keys? Oh, now where did I leave my keys? Where could they possibly be? And then all of a sudden it appears in our mind, oh, I know, they're on the kitchen counter. Now, when those explicit memories from our conscious mind are activated, we know we have a memory. But everything important in life is stored in a stealth way in the unconscious mind, in these stress circuits. And so when they are activated, there is no experience that it's a memory. It just feels real. And that's because the unconscious mind is the survival brain, and it doesn't want you to have to use your thinking brain to access that valuable information. So it does it automatically and stealthily. The problem is stress levels are so high now that everyone has a lot more of these stress circuits, to the point that that our unconscious mind, what we believe is real, is oftentimes completely wrong, and we don't even know it until we have symptoms like we go through a divorce, or our child won't talk to us, or we lose our job, or we have these stomach aches, or these bowel problems, or cancer, or any of these that are stress-induced problems. So essentially, your amygdala in your emotional brain was full of a lot of stress circuits, and it is not giving you any signs at all unless you go through a brain scan. And even then, the brain scan doesn't help because it doesn't tell you what to do about the circuits or unlock the circuits. It just does show that there is some stress there.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm also a student of history and love history. And as I look back through time, it seems to me that this is my own analysis. I don't have any historical or empirical, I should say, data to back this up. But, short of wars or, let's say, for example, living through a famine or something along those lines, people's lives were a lot slower, and we hit the Industrial Revolution, and since that time it just seems like life is just keeps speeding up and speeding up and speeding up, and getting faster and faster and faster. And because we have so much technology and so many devices, and I don't just mean cell phone devices, but like washers, dryers, vacuums, whatever, to help us supposedly create more time to relax, we don't relax, we just keep doing more and more and more. And maybe people didn't have a lot of these issues because their lives were a lot slower and they were able to um, relax more just naturally. What do you?
Absolutely. We have hunter-gatherer brains that want sameness. They
Mhm.
want security. They want boredom with the learning a few things here and there, but not too much. And right now, the speed of change, the information overload, also a number of temptations. There's so many ways you can get an abnormal, harmful dopamine high followed by a low now. So our environment is very toxic. But what happens is that if you let if your set point's not one or two, you're in trouble. So one again is where you're connected, you're highly resilient, you come back to joy. And I don't mean happy, happy. I mean of purpose, grounded in your body. Two means feeling good. When you go down to the lower parts of your brain, starting with the limbic system and then the reptilian brain, more toward your cheekbone and then your chin, what happens is the circuits, like you had in that brain scan, are going crazy like this. And they're throwing out these terrible chemicals that are aging you quickly, that are causing extremes of behavior, numbing you, and essentially causing disease. But also, the thinking brain becomes your enemy. So instead of in low stress, the thinking brain thinks flexibly, is explorative, really will sort of flicker into different ideas. Once you go into the stress zone, so your chemistry is stress-based, again, which we believe 90% of people in the United States have. That's why we're trying to get EBT to every therapist, every physician. So if you go to your physician, ask them, are you EBT certified? And if not, why not? Because we want to get this physiology and the power of neuroplasticity into everyone's hands. But essentially, your own brain turns into a monster. And what it does is it starts worrying about things. It starts thinking about what could happen here and what if that, and then what if I then what are my other options? And it's disconnected. And so the thoughts themselves are actually pummeling your brain and amplifying your stress and strengthening those stress circuits. That's why we just say to anyone who's starting EBT, go to the website, get the app, and then have fun with it. Because you're going to go at your own pace, you're going to explore it in your own way. And what you're going to find is that you start seeing that you can sleep at night and that you don't eat as much and all that, but do it slowly and have fun with it because you're going to notice that you're not ruminating and that you don't have those stomach aches and you're stopping the age-related decline in set point. If you don't do something to upgrade how we process stress, to clear those stress circuits, every year the set point in your brain goes further into stress. And the more it gets locked into stress because the stress circuits have no shut-off valves. Those healthy circuits at brain state 1 or 2, not 3, 4, or 5, they're like flickering and you're kind of feeling pretty good. And you're just, you're expansively thinking. And once you cross that line into those stress circuits, they have no shut-off valves. So once you get there, not only do you get stuck there, but those circuits are really nasty. And that what they do because of something called state-specific memory. Whereas if you're in a particular state, you have kissing cousins, and those kissing cousins are other stress overload circuits. So it's like you go from one excess to another, from one worry to another, and you just essentially are imploding with being occupied by nothing. So if you want to do something in the world, get rid of your stress circuits, get up to brain state 1. You will have endless energy. You will be radiating out your joy. You won't have the health problems. And what you'll be appreciating is that you have a loving sense of connection to yourself and the spiritual and the goodness of life. And so you can handle anything, really.
Oh, well, I have a odd question for you. I have lots of odd questions today. Now, I've had a rather stressful day, and it's because I'm doing two new things. Well, I wouldn't say new things, but two things that are a little bit challenging for me. One, I had to give a little speech this morning that requires that I memorize, some information and not just get up there and read a script. At my age, which doesn't have to be this way, but it seems to be this way, I have a harder time memorizing things. So I spent, a couple days before and this morning, rehearsing that, rehearsing that, rehearsing that. Short 5-minute speech. Shouldn't have been a big deal. And it wasn't. I mean, I was a little nervous, in presenting. But as soon as I got done with that, I got notified that I have another hour and a half presentation I have to do tomorrow night where I have to have all of the information not memorized, but know well enough that I can't carry any notes, no script, no nothing with me, right? Because I do historical tours, and I've done some in the past, but this is a different, it's got different information in it. And so I've spent the afternoon just doing my best to go over and over and over the script. And as I'm talking to you now, I'm not sure if this is a correlation or causation or maybe neither one. I notice that even as I'm talking to you and you're talking about, we talk about this, one is up on the top of your head, right? Two is kind of by your temples. Three is on your cheekbones, kind of right in that area. Four is lower and then down to your chin, that area, right? Five down there. Well, I'm noticing that my face is like really been tight. And as I'm talking to you, I'm noticing that my face is relaxing because now I'm doing something that's very comfortable for me, just sitting and having a conversation with somebody. That's not hard for me. But memorizing all this information is like, you know, is there any, if if I wanted to detect if I'm in a state of stress, because I didn't really feel like I was in a state of stress today, but yet I feel tense and I notice it mostly in my jaw and in my face.
You are stressed. You're at 3, 4, or 5. You're probably at 4.
Okay.
Now, there's two ways around that because remember, these tools in the EBT app, you have every resilience tools, and there's 5 of them, plus there's a bunch of additional ones that are exciting to use, but the basic ones, that you have everything you need to get to one no matter what. And I will promise you that. You can get to joy with that app because the brain wants you. It's not that the app is so great or EBT is so great. It's that EBT bothered to look at what was going on in your brain and just codified it so you can use the beauty that's natural in your own brain. And so, based on biochemistry, this is what's going on. There's 2 problems. Number one is primary stress, and the other is secondary stress. The primary stress is about memorizing all that material.
Yes.
The secondary stress is being stressed about being stressed. Okay?
Yes.
So you can knock off the stress. This is what my suggestion is. And because I'm finding myself getting angry. And by the way, we are told not to be angry, but biochemically, a brief protest, an expression of anger, is the only way to stop depression and anxiety because it unlocks the circuits. You only do it for about 15 seconds. But if people haven't learned how to be safe with anger and how to celebrate it and use it well, they're going to be depressed or anxious because if they start to get stressed, they go right into anxiety, depression, hostility, or numbness or shame. So you end up relearning psychology based on biochemistry in EBT. And so the first thing that comes, I found myself getting angry and sad that you, with all your goodness, are putting yourself through this. Okay?
Okay.
So and for I'm 76, but I've never been even when I was 12, I could never memorize something. And I would never get in a position where I had to memorize something. So there's 2 things I would say. You could use EBT we call it spiraling up from stress to joy in a few minutes, and you could stop being stressed about the whole thing. So you could finally relax. If you're relaxed about it, I mean, truly biochemically, not just trying to force yourself to be relaxed, okay, not winging it, but actually being relaxed. Then the second thing is that when you're relaxed and you have that wisdom of being at brain state 1, which is joy or connection or being centered, you would then evaluate what limits you're going to put on those people that are making the request.
Okay.
And so what I would do, for instance, I would say, hey, you guys, and I don't know your situation, but I'm telling you that at that point of brain state 1, the perfectionism stops, the self-blame and shame stops, the lack of worthiness stops, and the lack of passivity stops. And you know you're passive if you're engaging in overeating or over whatever. The opposite, if you're passive and don't stand up for yourself, then the brain gets aggressive and we have to do things to other people or ourselves that aren't that healthy. So what I would do in your situation, assuming I know a little bit about what's going on, is I would say to the people, to myself, I'm going to do the best I can, no better. And if it is not perfect, oh well, they can get someone else next time. And I'd go to that person and say, you want me to do an hour and a half? And when you say to me that they told you all of a sudden you have to do it, you have a right to say, no, stop, wait, or I'm going to do it under these conditions. And you say, well, you know what? I would love to get that talk. And this da 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 da. But given this short notice, I can do this, but I can't do this. How would that be for you? Because when you're at brain state one, you have boundaries that are really loving and sensitive, but also protective. When you're down there at three, four, or five, and those stress circuits are owning us, we are willing victims. We end up letting people run our lives for us, or we get so hostile that no one wants to be around us, or we just shut down. So, this is why I do this, because I know that I suffered when I didn't have these skills. Almost everyone is suffering needlessly. These are skills that anyone can learn. Teach them to your children and grandchildren. Get the app and then you share the app with everyone you know. Okay, just let them use your app. Okay, where if family and friends, anyone can use your login to learn these skills. And what's going to happen is if we can change America, so it's not back with the dinosaurs thinking you have to change your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors when the brain has no use for any of those. It can only see circuits. Instead, you just go in and say, oh, what I just did, that was a circuit. I'm going to rewire it or I'm going to shut it off. And when I get to that brain state of one, that joy state, I'll have such good judgment that not only will other people want to be around me and I'll be that silent leader in my own way, but I will be able to protect myself from people that are predatory or people that with their own circuits that are being driven and perfectionistic and demanding and selfish. And you know what? In this world where more and more people are down there having their stress circuits run them through no fault of their own because no one's taught them how to use EBT, and it is the only way to clear these circuits because they're emotional circuits. They do not change with mindfulness. They don't change with positive thinking or even exercise. So what happens is we can change our culture around so people go to each other and say, well, it's a circuit. You can always rewire it. And, I was married and divorced, and I'm now very happily married. I was a single for about 12 years, and I was thinking, I'm really getting weird. I just work all the time. So I think I'm going to go out on Match.com once a week on Tuesday nights when I don't teach that night, and I'm going to go out and date someone. And on the fourth date, I met this wonderful man. And we are now happily married. We've been together about 13 years. But I know for sure that he has a lot of stress circuits and I have a lot of stress circuits. And if we didn't use EBT together, we would not have a loving relationship. We would not have reciprocity. We would, and we'd probably, I don't even know if we'd be together. We probably would get, bored or sick of each other in some ways. So what I'm saying is, most importantly, people don't care if they get diabetes. They don't care if they're obese. I mean, it's nice to not be, but they can deal with it. What people can't deal with is loving relationships that have gone stale. They've lost their spice. They've lost their attraction. They've lost their sensitivity to each other and their laughter. And what happens in relationships, if you're in a relationship right now where you think, wow, I sure wish it was better, or even, I think I might call it quits, please don't. And it doesn't mean dragging your partner to couples counseling because that's ineffective. It does not rewire these circuits. A lot of therapists learn EBT and do couples counseling, and they do beautiful work. And there's always some merit in everything you do. But the idea is you yourself take responsibility, get yourself to brain state one, where you won't be a willing victim of that person. You won't just go with the status quo, and you will connect with your own spiritual and wisdom within and be at a different level, a higher order of functioning. And by just you being at a higher order of functioning, that relationship will change. I promise you. Because what happens is your partner will no longer be reinforced for bad behavior and bad circuits. And once you're not feeding those bad circuits, but you're brain state one yourself, it's no longer fun to do it because it takes two at brain state three, four, or five with these circuits in order to ruin your relationship. And at one point, your relationship was beautiful, or you wouldn't have come together. And if you're into blaming or shaming the other, or blaming that other person, stop. Because what we know from science is that there was a time when you both committed to each other and loved each other and were, ready to hop in the sack, ready to have a good belly laugh, totally emotionally honest with each other. It was all just flowing. Every single interaction of that, when the other person was at five, because intimacy only happens at one, if you were sucked in and you went to five too and were passive or aggressive, you own 50% of the harm done to that relationship. And likewise, anytime you separate from that and say, I'm not going to blame or shame you, but I have been a party to, you know, decreasing the satisfaction in this relationship, I'm going to get to one. And I'm probably going to say a few things to you like, oh, like I said to my husband, he doesn't listen, he doesn't listen. So he says, he gets very dogmatic and he says, you have to do this. And we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And I say, I appreciate that we're going to do it this. Darling, do you care how I feel about it? And what's he going to say? No.
Yeah. Then he'd
So then he
really
says,
be in
well, I
trouble.
don't know. I don't know. We're going to do this. I said, yes, but I understand. I really, truly understand that's how you feel. But do you care how I feel? And all of a sudden, the old way of interacting that I could blame him for and feel like this victim because he doesn't listen to me, it's over because I have bothered to get to joy.
So this leads me to, and I think this is a good place to kind of summarize this and go from here is is the app everything? You said, you can have it in conjunction with therapy. Do most people use it in conjunction with therapy? Or is it just something you can do on your own? What's the difference? How does that work?
It depends what your budget is. We really understand that EBT could save our nation
Hmm.
because it's the brain of people that matters. It's their brain.
Hmm.
The brain in stress is a disaster, and the brain in joy is our salvation. And so we have a website at ebt.org where you can have anything you want. If you can only afford the app, there is a very, very sophisticated app, and on every single page, there is a little information button. And if you read each one, you will know how to do it. If you want to do it that way, the very cheapest, then you let other people in your family borrow your app and you get your walking partner to do it, you get your next door neighbor to do it, and then we teach you how to do what's called community connections, where you say, hey, you call up somebody, you say, do you have 5 minutes? It only takes 5 minutes to do it, to listen to me or to be listened to. They say yes or no, and then one of you uses the app, the other one listens, and then the person who's listened gives some kind remarks. And in 5 minutes, both people are in joy. You can create your own community around this. There's also every single day, because we know how powerful it is to do it with others, there's a drop in for a little bit more. There's a drop in where you can call in from the app. Nobody knows who you are. And there's a health professional who's certified in EBT, and somebody in the group, this telephone group, volunteers to use the tools. They're really stressed. And so the provider actually guides them through it, doing it really effectively and really deeply. Everyone in the room goes down with them, feeling stressed at first,
Hmm.
goes up to joy and rewires their own brain just by listening. That's every single day of the year. Then there's private half an hour group, private hour group, and there's even a 30-day intensive. So whatever you want, you can get. It's just the main thing is get the app, start working with it. And if you want to upgrade with more support, do that. But you need to know these skills. And we do everything we can to make it really fun, really fast, and really meaningful.
I like that. I fully appreciate that. My program that I use, you know, like I've mentioned, learning to lead when you're not the leader. I feel the same way about it. I don't have, quite the, and I use this term very loosely, magical solution that you have. I should say, let's use prescriptive formula. Well, I'd rather use that rather than magical, but I definitely am going to investigate it and try to use it myself because I feel we are at a point in our civilization where, and especially with all of the new technology that's out there that can either save us or kill us, take your pick, and all of the other toxic environments that exist, whether it be at work, whether it be, politics or, even in our families, high divorce rates, parents not getting along with children. I mean, I could make a whole list, and I'm sure you could add to it, that we really need to change the trajectory of where we're going. And I think people feel powerless to do so. And they feel like you and I talked about a little bit before we jumped on the call, is if I'm not a person of authority over other people, then I don't have the ability to influence what's going on. When in reality, I think we do. And I'm coming to believe that you have a tool that can help facilitate that.
And I think, Cheryl, you're being very realistic that when you go into a room and nobody's listening to you, and there's people up front that are just blaring whatever or telling you rules, that you have to be really resilient to
Mhm.
not collapse and not to feel like you're powerless or not worthy or not good enough. And what EBT does is it clears all of that clutter away and gets you back to a brain state of empowerment with love. And when you're in that wise, loving place biochemically, it's not something you're struggling to do, like you're trying to be good or trying to be psychological. It's biochemical. And truly, that is what our DNA is about. Our DNA wants us, is helping us, doing everything we can to get back to that state of connection. And our society, which overthinks everything, over medicates everyone, over pathologizes everyone. So they've got all these diagnoses. The diagnosis is always one thing, stress circuits, and the
Yep.
solution is EBT.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time today. And I think you mentioned ebt.org is where you can get this app. And if you'd
Exactly.
like to share any contact information, either you can share it here or I can just put it in the show notes. It's up to you.
Great. Either one, it should go to ebt.org so they can go there. And that also directs them to ebtconnect.net. So
Mm.
those are the two places. Please go to all your health professionals and say to you, are you certified in EBT? Because when these therapists and these physicians and nurses and nutritionists get certified, it changes their whole practice because people start changing. And they're not just giving advice, but in fact, people are in a brain state where they can actually follow through. And also, all these health professionals, God bless them, they have a huge amount of stress. They take in everyone's stress and they need it for themselves. So thank you very much. It's just start with the app and go from there.
Well, thank you so much. And I definitely am going to do that here shortly.
Thank you.
If you've been enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to leave a 5-star rating to help others discover this valuable content. Your support is greatly appreciated and helps us continue creating engaging episodes for our listeners.